auditory processing disorder is going to be a little more extreme than just avoiding or seeking sounds. When you have an auditory processing disorder, your brain is pulling in that information and not processing it correctly, or maybe processing it like slower.
Welcome to the Helping Kids Be Kids podcast. I'm Ann Chinworth, the outreach manager here at Little Lighthouse. And today I'm here with our director of education, Hannah Jimenez. And we're going to be talking about auditory processing today. I'm super excited. I feel like every time I talk with Hannah, I learn so much. So I hope the same is true for you guys. So we're just going to jump right in.
Yeah.
What is auditory processing?
So in really simple terms, auditory processing is just the way that our brains take in information. We use our ears to take in information. It processes that information, and then we use that to interpret the world around us. So for auditory processing, that looks like me hearing a dog bark and knowing it's a dog. And being able to like identify different animal sounds, or knowing, oh, I see a leaf blower and that's probably going to be loud.
Okay. So everyone processes sound in a different way, and all of our senses in a different way. So what does that look like for auditory processing?
So for auditory processing, you're going to have people who have a really low threshold. So that means that your threshold is where you experience a sensation. So for auditory processing, if you have a low threshold, that means you're going to like hear sounds maybe kind of louder. You're going to hear stuff right away. You're going to process it right away. And so if you have that low threshold, you're probably going to be someone who avoids loud sounds.
Okay.
I kind of tend to be like an avoider when it comes to auditory things. I don't like loud stuff. I don't like to hear people chewing. And then on the other side of that, you have people who have a really high threshold. So it takes more of that sound, it takes more of that input to make them feel regulated and for them to process that information. So those are going to be like kids who like to listen to loud music or love toys that make loud noises.
Okay. I feel like I probably overwhelm a lot of people's auditory thresholds, but I might actually myself be an avoider, and I love to have some headphones on to do some deep work, so probably not helping those with low thresholds with my laugh and everything, but
I love your laugh.
Well, thank you. It helps that you're my friend, so
it doesn't bother me.
So what are some strategies that like parents and teachers and caregivers, how can they help kids with different auditory processing thresholds? Yeah,
so it's really important to meet those needs so that kids feel regulated and they're able to learn and ready to just explore their environment around them. If they're really overwhelmed by loud sounds, then they're just going to be constantly overwhelmed and thinking about those sounds. And they're not going to be able to like engage and participate in what's happening around them or like an activity at school. The best thing we do for kids who avoid sounds is we use noise canceling headphones.
Great.
So, do you want to try them out?
Sure, would love to. Hopefully they fit.
They should. They're stretchy. Yeah, so when you have on noise canceling headphones, you can still hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so what it does is it just dampens the sound. They're not fully noise canceling, but it dampens the sound so that they're not constantly being bombarded by all the different sounds happening, especially in a classroom. Yeah. There's lots of kids running around making noises, and that's just going to dampen everything so they can just focus on what they need to focus on and not be so overwhelmed by all the different sounds happening around them.
Yeah.
And then that's really the best tool for kids who avoid loud sounds. So, and then for kids who love loud sounds, the best way to engage them is with like things that are loud. So if they're constantly seeking things, it'll be like pretty obvious. It's like the kids who maybe even like press their ears up against like a speaker, or like really love the loudest toys in the room, and they'll play them over and over and over and over. And so just letting them engage with things like that, maybe purposefully using like loud toys with them to get their attention, using music, letting them listen to music on headphones, all those kinds of things are going to help them process sound and really be more like regulated and ready to learn.
Yeah. I'm thinking about if there's a student who has a low threshold and a student who has a really high threshold, I feel like it would be hard to meet both of those needs in the same classroom activity. Yeah. So I guess they can wear the headphones, but is that like, how do you meet that high threshold need too?
Yeah, it's hard to find that balance. I will say in a classroom, it's usually really loud anytime.
Well, that's true.
Lots
of kids.
Anytime there's more than like a couple of kids together, they're loud. So a lot of our classroom activities are using music, and they're just like big loud activities, and our teachers are excited and loud, which is really great. So the best thing to do is to just focus more on meeting the needs of those avoiders, and just helping them not feel overwhelmed. And I think a really good thing you can do is teach them how to ask for their headphones, and just teaching them that this is a tool that they can use, and they can use it anytime. One thing I've done in the past is I've had like a picture card that has a picture of headphones on it, and just I've left it, like I've had one little boy, I would Velcro it to his desk so that he would see it and remember, oh, I can ask for headphones, and he would just get it and bring it to me every time he felt like he needed headphones. Or like with bigger kids especially, you can just like leave the headphones on their desk or in their desk for them, or put like a command hook on the back of their chair and have headphones connected to their chair all the time, so they can just like grab them anytime they need.
Genius. Yeah, I love that, teaching them too to advocate for themselves and know how they can ask for help and what they need. So we're talking about different auditory sensory thresholds. Is there a difference between that and, or maybe what is the difference? I don't know if there is, between that and auditory processing disorder?
Yeah, so auditory processing disorder is going to be a little more extreme than just avoiding or seeking sounds. When you have an auditory processing disorder, your brain is pulling in that information and not processing it correctly, or maybe processing it like slower. And so when kids have an auditory processing disorder, a lot of times it looks like they're not paying attention, they're not following classroom rules. Maybe at home, you're asking them to do a chore or help with something, or, pick that toy up off the floor, and they're not doing it. It doesn't mean that they're just not listening to you. It means that their brain's not processing that verbal instruction. And so figuring out ways to help them, like giving them visuals, or maybe like showing them what to do to help them process that information, because just a verbal instruction, they're not necessarily going to process it.
Yeah. I feel like maybe waiting might help with that too, because I know sometimes my roommate will ask me a bunch of questions at once, and it takes me like 10 seconds to answer. And it might seem like I'm not listening, but really I think I'm just processing. And she's a very quick processor. So sometimes she's like, did you hear me? And I'm like, oh yes, I'm sorry, I'm just still thinking about how I want to answer. So is that a strategy too, just giving them a little more time? Or so
wait time is actually a really great strategy to use in any classroom. It can be awkward sometimes when you ask a question and then you just sit there and wait. I think just as humans, we're tempted to like ask it in a different way or ask it again, and really the best thing you can do when you ask a question and no one responds is like count to 10 in your head and give them time to process it. And a lot of times someone will start answering at that point,
which 10 in a classroom feels like
forever.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I'll never last. So how is auditory like sensory processing, how is that related to hearing loss or hearing disabilities?
So it's kind of a different thing. It's a little bit related, but when you have a hearing disability or hearing loss, that's when the actual like physical mechanisms inside your ear are not functioning properly. Whereas when it's just an auditory processing disorder, all the mechanics are usually working correctly inside your ear. It's just when it gets to the brain, your brain doesn't know how to use that information.
Okay. So it's a neurological challenge rather than like a physiological, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. And are there auditory specialists that can help you, or who do you go to for help with this?
So if you have a child that you think has an auditory processing disorder, the first thing to do, of course, is to like talk to their pediatrician. And you can seek help from like there's audiologists who are specialized in that. Also speech language pathologists. Audiology is within their scope of practice. Occupational therapists can also help. And there's also different kind of like neuropsychologists who can help with those things as well. So there's a lot of different professionals that can help with auditory processing.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be going to them with all my other questions. Do you have, I feel like yeah, I feel like I learned a lot. Do you have anything else you want to add about auditory processing or?
I don't think so. I think just if you are, if you do have a child who seems like they have an auditory processing need, just know that it's okay.
Yeah.
And that there are a lot of successful therapies and treatments that can help them.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Helping Kids Be Kids, and we hope it helped. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us, and stay tuned for more episodes on other senses that we're studying. So, great.